Hello from the other side.
And then she goes, oh, can I talk about quantum and how overhyped it is? And then I kid you not, she starts going on this rant. Okay, all right. So here is your time to express yourself. Why does quantum trigger you? Welcome to Learn or Be Learned. Thanks for tuning into the guest series called Conversations for the Hungry. I'm your host, Shiva Danshaker, and let's talk. All right, so I'm here with Michelle. Michelle is a physics junkie, and she is working on her way to get a PhD, right?
Yeah.
PhD. Michelle, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hey guys, so my name is Michelle. I'm from San Diego, California, and right now I am a first-year student at Emory University. Oh God.
Are you nervous?
I am really nervous. But yeah, so I'm a first-year grad student, and I am on my way to get my PhD in physics.
Yeah. So, what got you into physics?
Yeah, I'm always fascinated by it. I mean, it is such a broad field of study. But I really just want to know, fundamentally speaking, what's out there. What got me first into physics was probably just astrophysics or cosmology. When I was 2 years old, my mom was just telling me, oh, there's this thing called black holes. And I was just like, what? How? So ever since then, I've been just into science, but now I'm doing my research in experimental soft matter physics.
Yes. So first off, black holes, super cool. They're probably one of my favorite, astronomical, inquiries. I don't know what you want to say. What do you want to call them? But black holes are super cool. I think there's a lot to go from that. Mm-hmm. But first, before we do talk about any of that kind of stuff, what exactly is soft matter physics?
Ooh, that's a good question. So in the big physics field, there are a bunch of subfields, right? Mm-hmm. So we have stuff like hard condensed matter physics, soft matter physics, astrophysics, which a lot of people already know, and then AMO, atomic, molecular, and optics. And soft matter is basically we study squishy stuff, to put it in layman terms. Like
Play-Doh.
Yeah, so your hair gel, your toothpaste, even food, a lot of them, they're squishy and soft, right? So they're studying their dynamics is very important even for just for commercial production or even biomedical applications. A lot of them are super important. So we study colloids or polymers or droplet emulsions or microfluidics. So there's a long list of different systems that we're interested to study.
It sounds like there's just a lot on viscosity being the big term. I feel like that word's probably used so much in what you learn, right?
Yeah. A lot of people do this thing called rheology. So rheology is when you apply some sort of force to a system. So if I have colloidal suspension or a suspension of just small droplets, what would happen if I apply a force to it? So viscosity is a big thing that people look at, and modulus, that's just how systems react to this kind of deformation. And just basically there are a lot of directions you can go.
What is the most common question that you get when you're oh yeah, I study physics?
Definitely what first got me into physics. And a lot of people are surprised because when they think of a physicist, they're stereotypical physicists. They look like, someone who has crazy Einstein hair and probably a male. And I am 22-year-old girl who is just geeking out on all sort of science, and it doesn't fit people's stereotypes, so they just asked a lot of questions oh my God, why are you not in finance or something? What made you choose physics? That's definitely a main question. And Another thing I get from people would be like, what are your views on religion or the spiritual stuff? How do you see the interplay of science and religion? So that's another stuff that
let's dive into that, right? How do you see religion in the lens of physics? And has your perspective changed since you've pursued physics?
That's a very interesting question. So my personal background, so on my mom's side, both my grandparents are Christian. And I was never like raised Christian. But I've been interested in like just studying, like, why are people faithful? Like what make people believe? What make people not believe? Like, I think this is very interesting. To me personally, I would identify myself as agnostic. Like, I don't know what's out there. The thing with science and religion is that science is usually we use logic to formulate a theory. We try to prove the theory. We try to find physical evidence or indirect evidence, what's out there to guide us through and finding the quote unquote truth. But for religion, I think most people I know who are religious, they find they just seek the spirituality out of religion. They don't really seek science. You wouldn't read the Bible and be like, oh, well, the world was created in 6 or 7 days and that's it. It doesn't happen that way.
Yeah. As someone who is a religion and anthropology major, but also has taken a lot of science classes, I see this like huge dichotomy because in science, like you said, everything is about reductionism. It's all about reducing possibilities for an explanation or like a theory, right? We're trying to explain things that sometimes religion just kind of embraces without trying to nitpick its way into like a reality-based explanation.
That's a way to look at it for sure. I mean, there are different ways that it works in research. Sometimes definitely we're trying to prove a theory if it's wrong or right. But then if you look at a lot of the research papers out there, at the end, they're like, we don't know what's going on with this phenomenon or whatever. And here are possible ways to, investigate it, to explore it. But the problem is at any given time in history, any scientific research, there's a frontier, right? There's always a boundary between, there's things you know for sure, like there's gravity, between there's things that you don't know exist and things that maybe exist, right? So like we know about dark matter. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of that term. Nobody had seen it. We didn't know that it was a thing until, I don't know, like 100 or decades ago. And I mean, there's some evidence out there that suggests that it exists, but it requires formulating this mathematical model. So that is something that when, there is a threshold for our knowledge, and beyond this knowledge, some people might prone to think, oh my gosh, this is God's work. While some other people will be like, well, let's think about it. Maybe, this frontier we'll just keep breaking through it.
Yeah, I think a great example is looking at the human body. A lot of people will say, the human body is so intricate to the point where we feel like it's got to be some sort of higher power. But then you see other, people in the science field or doctors or someone, and you see them say something like, oh, the human body is not a perfect, mechanism. And they give examples like, oh, our occipital lobe, which is a region in the brain, is located in the back of our head, back of the skull. And why that's a problem is if part of our brain that controls eyesight is behind our eyes, then that just means it's like an easy target to get hit without seeing things.
Exactly.
Right? So
that is a very good example, and we actually learned about it when I was taking this very interesting class. It was called The Problem of God. Basically, we just like explore like, oh my gosh, like what are the arguments for and against the existence of God.
Is this a religion class or like philosophy? Or
it was a religion class, but it felt like a philosophy class. But we did talk about something like that. And, what is perfect? We get fascinated by science every day. But the thing is, humans, we're so limited by our senses and by our brains, right? Like we can only understand to a certain level. There's so many mysteries that we still don't understand. Like for example, like multiverse. What is that? Right? We don't, like, a lot of things we just don't know. And because they're so fascinating, people might just want to just go to the spiritual side and be like, well, there must be a God, right? Because why else? So
what's interesting is science has explanations for things like, oh, this might be the way multiverse works, right? But then religion also has explanations for like, oh, this is why you shouldn't sin, right? So it almost sounds like, in a way, they're still kind of the same thing.
You mean science and religion?
Yeah, in a way, they're both trying to explain something that they don't entirely understand.
I guess this is super interesting because when you think about religion, are we talking about organized religion that existed for thousands of years? Or are we talking about people's loose belief on, some spiritual stuff? Like it's very interesting. And yeah, like I feel like that goes back to, if you see Bible, was it literal? Or is it something that is completely just metaphorical? Like, I feel like most people do interpret the Bible as like, oh, they're just metaphors. Like nobody's going to look at the Bible and be like, oh, like this is exactly what happened. It's not a history. But I feel like there's like a threshold of things, like a balance of what you take. Everybody have their own interpretation of God, because somebody out there definitely think that God is like a man in the clouds or some type of figure.
Yeah.
Or some people would just tell you God is within you. So how everyone sees it, that's their own freedom. And, I'm not telling people what to think or what to believe. But when it comes to science, there is some type of consensus that I don't see religions have, in a sense. Because in the scientific community, we are mostly trained, in a similar way, like if we're in the same field. We have experiences in labs and doing research. There are a lot of shared knowledge in that way. And even with theories are supported by evidence. But in religion, I feel like it's very personal because it is something spiritual and emotionally fulfilling. So for example, if you go to church, that doesn't mean necessarily you believe in God. Maybe you go to church to meet other people, to date, for their free food, or you happen to be religious just because you grew up Catholic or something, and your views may vary from other people. Like religions, they're just so complicated in that way, and I don't think within that community, I think it's very hard to at least reach one consensus, like what is God, because it does mean different things to different people.
And I think, I see the points you're making. Religion is very personal. It's very individualized, I think. Even within cultures of religious people, you'll often see slight differentiations because there's a personal touch to everything, right? Some people might like to go to church on Sundays. Some people like to go Wednesdays, whether that's, a reason because they enjoy it that day or like their work. Like there's always slight variations for people when it comes to religion. So I see where you mean that it has no like unified set of this is how it is. And it's whether it's, different religions or even in the same religion, there's always going to be a personal touch to it. As for where science seems more like they use a scientific method and things like that. But even though they do that, oftentimes there's always something more that we didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's always things that we're learning that counteract what we thought previously.
That's exactly right. And I mean, the most popular example that I can think of would be quantum mechanics. And that is something people always talk about on YouTube that I see. It is so not against, but just so different from the classical mechanics that we are used to associating our life with,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because, I mean, it didn't happen until like the 20th century, the full development of quantum mechanics. And the thing is, everybody like who studies it, like, I mean, I can write down like wave functions and stuff and carry out calculations. But what is actually going on is a big blank that we need to fill out.
Okay, so for those of you listening, Michelle and I had a phone call earlier, a week or two ago. We're like, okay, well, like, yeah, what do you want to talk about? And she's like, yeah, physics. And then she goes, oh, can I talk about quantum and how overhyped it is? And then I kid you not, she starts going on this rant. Okay, all right. So here is your time to express yourself. Why does quantum trigger you?
Oh boy. Besides, the class was pretty hard.
Strike one.
Well, the thing is, I love when people talk about science. It makes me happy that people are learning. However,
oh no.
However, people really have to check their source. It's like I have seen countless videos on social media, like on Instagram, on Facebook, on TikTok, whatever. Creators would just post videos, be like,
well, according to quantum entanglements, like atoms are like associated with each other. That probably means that our consciousness are like also connected.
Okay, and I was just like, excuse me, there is no physical law out there that states that. It just sounds like pseudoscience to me. And whenever I see creators post contents like that, I just have to comment and be like, there's like, no, this is not science.
Oh, do you comment?
Sometimes.
Do you comment? Oh no.
I mean, I don't say anything mean. I'm just like, I don't think there's any physical evidence that supports this claim. So
you're wrong, basically.
Basically, like, it's baseless. Right? I mean, it is fascinating. Don't get me wrong. It is so fascinating. Basically, different from our entire worldview, right? And the different interpretation of quantum mechanics that, you know, usually in the scientific community, like most popular one that we always are familiar with is the Copenhagen interpretation. So the interpretations are you can think of them as the bridge connecting between classical mechanics and quantum world.
Okay.
So I'm sure you've heard about Schrodinger's cat.
Yeah.
So,
but you should explain it for those who don't know.
So if you have a cat in a box and the box has radioactive element and there's a detector that is attached to a hammer. So basically, if the mechanism is that if the detector detects the radioactive material, it will trigger the hammer, which will come down and release the poison gas, and then that will cause the cat to die.
Yeah.
So you just put the cat in the box like this. You walk away.
Don't try this at home, right?
Don't try this at home. Please don't. But so you put the cat in the box like this, and you come back and observe it. Well, in the time frame when you leave the box, you don't know if the cat is alive or dead, right? It can be both. So in that case, we are saying that, okay, if I write a wave function of this situation, it will be the two states, which correspond to the cat being alive and dead. They coexist. They both exist until the moment I observe it, until the moment I open the box myself. So I either see the cat dead or alive. But in either case, it collapsed into one reality. So that is a Copenhagen interpretation that is like, you only care about the data. You only care about what your measurements are. And that is the famous phrase, shut up and calculate, come from.
What is that? It comes from this?
Yeah. So I think it was first brought up by either David Merman, or some people say it's Feynman, but who knows if Feynman actually said that. But basically, it's shut up and calculate. It's just like, don't care about how or why, but this is what happened. So people are definitely not satisfied with that, right? People are like, well, I want to know what happened. I want to know why it collapsed into one state. That is when be ready for this, Manning world interpretation comes in.
Oh, what is this?
So Manning world interpretation, you can think of it as multiverse, a version of multiverse. So it basically says that, well, it doesn't collapse into one state. Both realities exist. So the moment you observe the cat, if it's alive, you're in the reality where the cat is alive. But the cat is dead, that reality also exists. But it's the universe just kind of like split into two. You are not in that physical universe.
Yeah. So for every decision, basically, there's another split.
Which is tricky, right? Because this is where it goes wrong. People love this idea. I mean, it is fascinating, right? But it's only a theory, and there are many other interpretations in quantum mechanics like this. And it's not just Manning worlds. It's just one of the interpretations, and a lot of people actually don't buy it.
Have you seen Community?
Yes, I have.
Have you seen all of it?
No.
Okay, so have you seen the season where they kind of do this multiple parallel universe type thing?
I think so. It rings a bell.
So it's like, it was basically like they were playing this board game and they throw this dice and they're like, okay, whoever lands on has to go downstairs and grab the pizza from the pizza guy. So, there's a 6-sided die, there's 6 people, but that, when he tosses up the die in the air before it hits the ground, it like zooms into like 6 different scenarios and like 6 different storylines. And it's basically like, each one was a different version of reality, which was like kind of crazy.
Yeah, and this idea is in so many other sci-fis, right? It's, well, like I will not comment on those sci-fis. Like, I feel like a lot of them have wrong physics, but I'm gonna shut up for right now. But I think the idea is really interesting. I don't know how true it is, because it is, it might explain it, but because we have no association with the other universes that might exist.
Yeah.
So we don't know if it's true. And this is only one version of the multiverse. There are other like models of multiverses. Like there's this bubble universe, or an infinite universe, or just parallel universe.
Yeah, I've definitely watched some YouTube videos and things on this, and it was talking about, like, one example was, maybe the universe as we know it isn't even 3D, it's like multiple dimensions.
Yeah.
And how like these other theories might even like fit into, like, maybe, like, what I'm trying to say is, like, it might not even be one theory, it might be multiple theories merged into one.
Yeah, there are different. That's different models, right? And what you just said was, I think that's the parallel universe or the membrane universe.
Membrane, yeah.
That's when they say that. Okay, well, we have multi dimensions, and we have this world that we live right now. Like, this is 3 dimensions. So what if we have a bunch of 3-dimensional worlds, and we can, stack together? That becomes a 4-dimensional world, or it just goes on, and they may like collapse or whatever. A lot of interesting things may happen, and that's the membrane universe model. What really interests me, or what really kind of messed with my brain in a sense, was the infinite universe model. So I'm not sure if you ever heard of that one.
Sounds familiar, but give me a refresher.
So it just says that, okay, let's say this universe is infinite.
Okay.
Well, before I say anything, the universe I'm referring to right now is just the observable universe.
Yeah.
So let's just say the whole, what's out there beyond the observable universe right now. It's infinite. But also, we know that, particles they're only a finite arrangement for those particles.
Mm-hmm.
So that must mean if I just keep going in the future, it's gonna repeat. So I know this is a little bit hard to grasp, but like think of you have a deck of poker or something, and you just keep on shuffling it. Uno, whatever you want. You just keep shuffling it. If you have enough time and energy to do it, you're going to end up having the same sequence, right? If you just keep doing it, because there are only a finite number. It's big, but it's there. It's finite.
Yeah.
So it's basically the idea. So if I just keep going, if I live for infinite amount of years, if I just keep going to the edge of the universe, I'll find someone who looks exactly like me.
To bring it full circle, like we could even bring like the black holes back into this, right? What if you got like two parallel universes, and the black hole is the bridge between them? Oh my god! Because you know how like planets are like bound by this space-time continuum, and it looks like that. It's like that thing I'm sure everyone's seen it. It's like it looks like a trampoline with like a ball in it, and then it like drops, like but like a black hole like actually supposedly either breaks through or just like really like we don't even know where it goes. That's what I'm trying to say.
Wait, I thought that's a wormhole.
What's the difference?
I thought so. Black hole, I think it's a very dense body of mass. It's just like
it sucks everything.
It sucks in, right? But wormhole, I think it's more of like your idea of like a bridge between dimensions. But I'm not sure. I'm not an astrophysicist. Disclaimer. So Wikipedia.
That actually makes a lot of sense. But I'm wondering if those two things could be the same thing.
Fundamentally, as in like how they come to existence, I don't think so, because black hole is basically what happens to a really massive star after it dies, like after, so I don't really know how wormhole like it could even like exist in the first place. I haven't done my research on that yet, so I can't comment on that, but I don't think it comes from like stars.
Yeah, I feel like it would have to be made.
Oh, by who?
Well, maybe religion is back into this conversation.
Oh my god! Actually, this is really interesting because back in Newton's age, when he was developing his idea of motions, he actually at the end he was like, this calculation doesn't explain everything, so maybe there's space for God. So I find it really interesting that when we reach our threshold of knowledge, sometimes we're just like, oh, maybe God can help us out with this.
Yeah.
But I mean, also personally, so my idea of a God is like, well, with all this, I don't even know if a God exists, but I know for sure it's not a human figure or something. I just think it's something, if it exists, it would be so complicated, out of our comprehension, that exists beyond our observable universe.
Yeah.
Right. I don't really know like what's out there. I'm not denying it or confirming it.
I mean, it sounds really cool. I mean, so there's this idea, but it's like different civilizations, and I think like so it's like civilization 1, 2, and 3. Like 3 means, you can do intergalactic space traveling kind of civilization. And what is your thoughts on ever reaching the speed of light, traveling at the speed of light?
Oh boy.
It's because that's the only way you can travel intergalactically, right?
Until maybe we figure something else out. I mean,
yeah.
I'm just kidding. But I mean, here's the thing. Like if it happens, I don't think I'll be alive to see it.
Yeah.
But I think space travel could happen. I always wonder if it's possible to travel in any other way besides just like going in space.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Like teleportation type stuff?
I mean, yes, but yes and no.
Okay.
Yes and no. But then if you have teleportation, the major problem is like, well, will you be the same person?
Yeah.
Right?
Your atoms, everything.
What happens to your consciousness? Like, nobody knows. But reaching the speed of light, I'm pretty skeptical about that, because that is like, when you're near the speed of light, even like you're dealing with relativistic limits.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a lot of things that like, I'm just really skeptic of, reaching there. And, even if we do, like, I mean, of course, if we want to do that, our first step is to figure out if we can make one atom or one particle to travel with near the speed of light,
mm-hmm.
if that even happens.
Mm-hmm.
And then bigger scale stuff. And then does it ever even happen to humans? What if something horrible happens to our biological system if we are traveling near the speed of light? Nobody knows.
Yeah.
Right? So
we'll probably sadly throw like monkeys and like animals first.
Oh, not the monkeys.
Monkeys.
That's so sad. But
it is sad.
I'm hopeful though. I'm hoping that, like I always geek out about aliens and stuff too. Like
So
I
do
definitely I think that they exist. I mean, like we are aliens, right?
I feel like it'd be ignorant for us to assume we're the only people on the existence of the universe and other universes.
Yeah.
If the odds of everything coming together perfectly for our type of life to exist, there's got to be some sort of life out there, and it might not be like ours at all. Like they might be like, if we're mainly on like, oxygen, hydrogen, carbon, like if we're on these organic material, maybe their thing is like, like, I don't know, like nitrogen and phosphorus maybe, or something weird, like they could be over some other completely different elements that sparked their type of life.
Yeah. And the thing that really interests me is that, are they going to have the same morals as us? What kind of culture will they have?
That speaks a lot on what morality even is.
Exactly.
Right?
And then like, are they going to have their faith? Are they going to believe that there's a God? Or, like there's all sort of, I hope they are here among us or whatever, because I'm really curious. But also I don't want that to happen, because I'm afraid of what is about to happen if that does happen. You know what I mean? It's just like, if they already can space travel, if they can already like do the intergalactic travel thing, like then that would mean they're way more like...
Oh, yeah. I already talked about this with friends. Like, if they were to come down to Earth and be like, hello, what's up? They would literally probably crush our reality with everything we know, right? Because they could be like, oh, that physics stuff, like, you guys are wrong. Like, this is what a black hole really is. We've been through it, like all sorts of things. It's like, oh yeah, Jesus, he was really cool. Like, they just know everything. They've like seen it all, right? So
yeah.
Well, also, what's weird is you see a lot of hieroglyphics and old scriptures and a lot of old religious and cultural items depicting UFOs.
Right, I've seen
why?
that.
Right? Like, why?
It's so freaking... And you see that in a lot of cultures. And the thing is, I don't know. Like, we don't know if they mean it figuratively or literally. But even if it's something, so metaphorically...
but that's so above its time.
Not only that, but also you see like the... how they look similar even in different culture.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly.
The similarities that you see.
Yeah, right. Like a ship, like because like there was no flying. There was no like with these cultures, there was no such thing as airplanes.
Exactly.
So for them all to depict a flying metal type ship, all in a similar fashion of a circular look and all these things, it's like it just makes you wonder like either what sparked it, and why has that depiction stopped over time in our societies? Did they stop coming? Are they real? All these things.
Or and the thing is like right now, like I really want to know, but unfortunately, a lot of the footage I see online are like doctored and fake.
Yeah.
So like there isn't like in the government officials, like I don't know, like what's going on. So like I'm really curious. Like I feel like a lot of people are curious.
Yeah.
And but unfortunately it is outside of our control. We just have to navigate our truth with whatever information that is out there.
Mm-hmm.
But personally, I am both excited and scared when it comes to aliens. I don't know if I'm more scared or excited, actually, to be complete honest.
It would probably change everything you know about physics. And any other science, to be honest.
Well, I don't know. I don't know what aspect it will change, because as far as we know, like Newton laws still apply in like further, like deep down in the universe, like, right? But like, would they even have the same kind of mathematical structure as us? Mm-hmm. Because in physics, we use math, right? Mm-hmm. Math is something that we created as human throughout history as a model. We model through things with our logic. So even if aliens come down to us, they know about, they know way more than we do. They might have different kind of math. How they model through math, they might not count to 10 or something,
Their math might also even be the reason that they're at the level of a society they are, traveling intergalactically.
Yeah, there's so many possibilities, and you really just don't know. Like, about speaking of technology and stuff, like, it is very fascinating, but also scary. like physics when you think about it.
When you take your first physics class. Interesting but scary.
Well, maybe not the first couple ones, but as
the
time
later
goes
ones are
on.
harder.
I don't know about harder. I just feel like it's not plug and chug anymore, and you really need to be critical about things in a certain level. And later on, like for example, like in intro classes. So in intro classes, you learn about Newton's laws, like trajectories, right? Projectile motions.
Yeah,
and
1D motion, right? 2D motions.
Yeah, and
I remember.
I hope so. So you remember all the equations. You just like plug in the velocity and ta-da, that's the acceleration, right? But then later on, you learn about symmetry of the system. You learn about the Lagrangian formalism, the Hamiltonian mechanics, and those stuff are just. And then you see how interdisciplinary physics are, or physics classes are, because. As later on you learn about, like, for example, statistical mechanics and thermodynamics and electrodynamics or quantum mechanics, right? Quantum field theory. You see a lot of proofs that work or they appear in different classes, but they are they're connected. You see this connection everywhere, which makes me think. I was like, if it happens to physics, maybe it happens to other natural science too, right? So if we want to understand the world better, maybe we should just like connect all the science together, like not just do physics, not just do biology. I mean, that's what we are doing right now, but like on the more individual level, I feel like we need conferences that have basically people in different fields come together and have a better understanding of the objective truth.
Yeah, I like that. The interdisciplinary like studies of science, just kind of combining them. I really do feel like physics is one of the more practical sciences. I feel like it really gets, because you really do apply a lot of physics in the real world.
Yeah.
It's just do what?
Engineers do take physics classes.
Right? And that's oftentimes where I see it too, is like, how much water do you need to fill this pool at this rate, or like things like that, right? But then you take like chemistry, and then it's like, what is the organic solvent used for this thing, and you're just like, I don't know any of these molecules. as you guys can tell, I didn't like chemistry as much as I like physics. But yeah, I liked physics. But you do see a little bit of bleed over in like, what is it when you're trying to find like two charges of an atom, right? Like you use the radius. And I think that was like a little bit of physics related, maybe.
I mean, they're honestly like, I would say science doesn't matter what field you are in. It's everywhere if you just look close enough, right? So like, we think we see physics a lot more because to build something, you need some like sort of understanding of, like even balancing stuff, right? Like making sure that your textbook doesn't fall onto the ground or something. That's like on a daily basis. But when you're cooking, when you're making food, a lot of chemistry or chemical reactions happen when you're making food. And, right? And for biology, like getting the vaccine, for example, like a lot of things are science in different aspects, but just like physics is probably the most obvious because we associate the sky, or when we look at the stars, we associate those with astrophysics. When we see everything, we associate them just more easily comes to us. Yeah. It's more direct in that way.
I agree.
I would say I really encourage people to learn more about physics because it is a very fascinating field. As you probably can tell, I'm a junkie when it comes to physics. Yeah, for physics. And definitely check your source. Check your sources and just have fun navigating through all this information.
Well, thanks for listening, guys. And Michelle, thanks for being on here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, guys.
Before you move on to the next girl.